We're outside the Museum of Chinese in America, a gem of knowledge in the heart of New York's Chinatown.
My name is Herb Tam. I'm the curator and director of exhibitions at the Museum of Chinese in America.
We're at the Museum of Chinese in America. Can you tell me where is it located and when was it founded?
Sure, the Museum of Chinese in America is located at 215 Center Street in Chinatown, Manhattan's Chinatown. It was founded in 1980, and it was founded because some people thought that, Chinatown's history is really important. But it was in danger of being lost because Chinatown in the 1970s and 80s was changing really fast, and a lot of the businesses that were really essential in the beginning stages of Chinatown's history were closing. Older folks were dying, and there wasn't family here to save their stories. So a group of young people decided that they should do it. They should document the history, and they started collecting all these things, stories, artifacts, images of Chinatown, and created a collection out of it. And from there, we grew into, a museum that today, we really try to tell those stories of Chinatown and Chinese in America and that history, but we also try to tell a cultural story. What is Chinese American life in America today and in its recent history, and sort of where is it going? And so we try to include a lot of things that we think people will engage with: art, music events, film events. So it's no longer just about history, but it's about culture at large, and we hope people find a link between the culture that Chinese are creating and are influenced by, and what the historical stories are with Chinese immigration and Chinese society in America.
Are we talking more so about the entrance into America through Ellis Island or Angel Island?
So this exhibition really deals with what happened at Angel Island. Angel Island was developed after the passage of the Exclusion Act, and it was a way to really check and restrict Chinese coming over here. So what you would have, and you can see back here, images of Angel Island here and here, where you're first given a sort of interview, oral examination. People would be asking you to, details about your life to make sure you are who you said you were. You were given a physical examination, to make sure you didn't have diseases, and so the whole procedure just, I think, made people who came through there feel like they weren't welcome. And I think that was the whole idea, and people were kept in detention for a long time while, the authorities were checking on your background, and, essentially it was a jail for immigrants coming over.
Can you tell me more about this specific exhibit behind you?
So the exhibit that we're in right now is called With a Single Step: Stories in the Making of America, and it's essentially 170-year history of Chinese in America, and it starts with the time before Chinese were even here, before the 1850s, when there was this attitude about Chinese culture, that it was very elevated. Things like silk, porcelain, teas are things people wanted, especially rich people in America, and they would trade for that in America. And a lot of the first people who were millionaires in America were made wealthy through trade with China. But then once Chinese people actually started coming here looking for gold and to work on the railroads in the 1850s and 1870s, Then attitudes about Chinese culture started to change, and there was a very negative perception of Chinese as being, dirty, as being essentially all the same kind of people, very homogenous kind of perception of Chinese. And eventually, Chinese were sort of targeted. In the 1870s, there was a lot of discussion about keeping Chinese out and limiting immigration in a very severe way. So, this exhibition deals with that and sort of what happens after, the 1870s, and especially after 1882 with the passage of the Chinese Exclusion Act.
What was the image of Chinese in America? Were they seen in a positive light? How were they portrayed to children and in the arts and newspapers?
The perception of Chinese, during the time of the Exclusion Act, really negative. Chinese were portrayed as sort of animals, like rats almost. They were portrayed as eating rats and primitive. They weren't sort of given their own individual identities. They were all seen as like one sort of mass race that was undifferentiated, very homogenous race, and people who were, engaging all kinds of illegal, illicit activities, and and this was all painted to make people think, okay, these people are not Americans.
Tell me more about the sense of community that the Chinese established amongst one another in Chinatown.
Yeah, so the mostly men in Chinatown at a certain point, they gathered in places like this, a general store. There used to be many of these in Chinatown, now there are none. And these general stores were places that, men would come and gather and hang out. They would drink tea, they would talk and kind of rest and relax. And these spaces were also places where you could get your mail delivered to. You can get translation services, you can get medical help. Some of these places sold herbal remedies. So businesses, places like these general stores were really important as far as gathering places for men. And because they serve so many different kinds of functions, they became very natural places for social gatherings. So general stores, the reason why we have a recreation of a general store here is to emphasize for people that, that this is very specific to the Chinese American community. In the West, Chinese people were driven out of many communities, and they weren't made to feel welcome. So a lot of them sort of came eastward, looking for manufacturing jobs and other work. And that's kind of the story of, at least Chinatowns and Chinese communities in the East Coast and in New York City. That's definitely a legacy.